good looking longs. At this point, what we have to just kind of be mindful of is that, we just have to be mindful of the location. We were a little bit overbought yesterday, so we're starting to pull back into some support. Even though you're getting weakness, in general, we're just stair stepping. So, these kind of, you push, you get a couple day pullback, you push, you get a couple day pullback, you push, you get a couple day pullback. That's been the nature of the market so far. We are at some resistance on the S&P. So if you look at the S&P, at this point, we've stalled at this level of resistance. So that's why we're getting a little bit of a pullback here, because you're only really at that second test. A little bit of pull and then a go would be ideal. So what you want to really see is just a nice, or you don't want to see any straight waterfalls, but just a nice orderly pull, and then a third test of that 340 will kind of take the market with it. This is only a two tester. So in general, right, if you have two tests at a key level, you're probably not going to break right through. Not on the first shot. You need to kind of pull it back and then go. So that's why we're seeing a little bit of weakness in the tape the last couple days. This is an orderly pullback on the QQQs. It's not a crashy pullback, right? We dumped yesterday. If you look at the intraday chart, after the FOMC, we dumped about 4 or 5 points. And so now we're just kind of digesting that. I think that's, frankly, we needed it. It'll reset some charts. If you're going through a lot of charts right now, you're probably noticing that there is a lot of extended stocks. A lot of stocks are looking really extended. Having a nice pullback for a couple days is going to reset some of the bases on some of these things and allow us some fresher entries. If you've noticed, the last couple days, minus a couple hot plays, there's been a lot more grind, in some of the names. And so that's where we're kind of coming in this. There's been select spots of some real heat, but you're not seeing necessarily that epic, right? Just epic bonanza that's been happening of recent. So let's take a look and just go through some of the earnings plays. There's a couple good gappers today that I think we're going to be able to play. And then, there's more than enough just on our regular watch list to kind of get going. So there's always two types of stocks that you want to put on your list. One is earnings plays, and then the other one is just good solid setups that are trending. And, you kind of make your way through these things. VRCA got some news. See, this is up too many days in a row. Probably that's a hard pass. So this OTRK, series preferred share, blah, blah, blah. So they had some hot earnings, a couple weeks ago. That's why it's been trending. But now the range is getting big, but you're getting pretty extended. I'd only really look at this. I mean, that's we might be able to get if this thing goes parabolic, you start to see a huge push on this. I actually think we'll probably be able to get a short on this bad boy. I mean, you're $16 away from the 9 EMA, so you're getting pretty extended. I think one more, one push today, we start looking at this one for potentially, some lower highs. This type of trend was huge yesterday. If we had a weak open, if it had opened at 60 or 62, I would have actually been thinking long, because the top of the Bollinger Bands are at 68. We would have had some room to kind of take this thing to the long side. But due to the extension in the gap, right, that's usually when you get extended and then you gap up, that's just called an exhaustion gap. That gets a lot trickier. So just something to be kind of just mindful of. This is going to be a little bit more tricky. So I'm only on watch on this one for a potential rollover. I won't try to long this unless it just really flushes out. CTRN, no volume. FLGT. FLGT. This is a nice trender, but it's a little bit thin. Lubes. Lubes is an analyst upgrade. Refresh from offering, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, pass. It's a retail stock. Shake Shack. You can see there's very few really good gappers today. So let's go over a couple of them that look interesting. CVAC, I think, is probably top of the list. They had a PR out that the European Commission has ordered possibly 225 million, 225 million shares of some dose, their vaccine dose, which is obviously like a pretty big, that's a pretty big number. So I think we're going to have, we'll have a potential play in this at some point today. You're already up 14%. You don't want to chase this up. If you look at the daily chart, when you got up to 86, and that day it actually got up to 95 in the pre-market, you came all the way back down and you filled this gap. So when you fill a gap, we were actually trying to, fuck around with this thing even yesterday. When you fill the gap, like see how you got it right down into the gap fill. So the gaps are like suction. When you come back in that suction spot, when you fill it, you end up with, potentially on a technical level, potentially a bounce as you're getting extended coming into the gap. Now, when you can couple that with, what is landscaping at 8 in the morning? Crazy. Now, when you couple that with the PR out today, which reads well, whether they really, got a deal for 225 million doses or not doesn't really matter, but it reads well, for the most part. So, at that point, you got a technical setup, which is the bounce, and then you got a PR out, some type of earnings out, which is good. Those are the things that, you really want to see when you're looking at bounce. I think this is going to be like top of the list. And also this is just day one of a move, right? So when you're always thinking about a move like day one, day two, this is day one of a move. I think that's really top of the list for us. Now, RKT's busting up about 6% in the pre-market. You finally remounted over the 9 EMA in the close yesterday, and it was a good trader yesterday for the most part. You can see you had this like nice gap-filled dip and then a really good push. Now, I wouldn't chase this thing up 6% at the open. This stock seems to do better on pulls. Wait till it comes back to the 9 EMA, 20 EMA, something like that. Let some of that gap fill. Let it bring back some steam, and then we'll be good to go on this one. Yeah, I think this one's this is number 2 on the list. Now, my only worry is that it's been up a few days in a row, but it's not extended. So there's a difference between, like, when you're looking at how many days in a row a stock is up, like, say it's up 5 days in a row. But if it's up, like, 5 days in a row and, like, 30 points, that's extended. But if it's up, like, 5 days in a row and 4 points or 3 points, it's up a lot in a row, but it's not necessarily extended. So there's always the caveat there that you got to be aware of. Now, on the other side of things, GAN's got a nice PR out, newly launched social casino app to Penn National. Penn has been a hot stock, so just putting the word Penn in their PR probably is enough to get this thing going. The old high on this is 28. Now, GAN is a little bit thin. So what you got to always be thinking about when you have a stock that's thin, it moves well, but it's thin. So you got to really have a precise entry on this one. If you try to trade this stock, if you're like ORBs, and GAN is thin enough and the float is thin enough where you can get a good solid ORB, you're going to have to layer into this one, meaning like say you wanted to get 1,000 shares. Don't go 1,000 shares, first of all, just because you got to account for the liquidity. So you want to reduce the size a little bit. But you may have to layer in like a couple hundred at a time due to, I think there's going to be a little bit of a spread on this one. And if it starts to set up, that's top of the list. We know this thing can move. Yeah, add that one to the list. That thing is hot. Good. Let me see on the downside. Let's see if there's any good ones on the downside. Estee Lauder cut workforce by up to 2,000 jobs, closed up 15% of stores. So this one is like a nasty looking PR, but it's taking it right down into support. That's like a much harder type of trade to do because it's not clean. So probably something like that, like I'd leave alone just because you'd have to really trade around too many levels and you'd have to really be in the moment in terms of the eyeball and the levels. So I'd leave that alone. This Groge, this has been like kind of the name that everybody's been, talking about for the last couple days. This thing is super extended. It's gone down about 6%, so you can't chase this one down. I do think this is a short. If it breaks, under 20, Now, you can't chase it up, though. You can't chase it up. So what we got to do here is I think it probably at the open, it'll bounce. If it starts to squeeze back and you start to get this thing back into 22, 23, watch for like lower highs, right? So watch it thrust back up. If you get a lower high, you'll have a way to manage your risk on the trade. And then I think that this thing ends up rolling over. Most likely, I mean, it's got a nice name, Grow Generation, but in general, this is a 99.9% likely that this stock is a pig. It's a dirty, big pig, and it'll probably come back down into 14, 15 range at some point, but you can't chase it down because it's a momentum stock. Frankly, there's a good shot that the dip just gets end up bought. You know, the market cap on this is so low, and you get kind of, when you get these like really low market cap, you know, stocks, you got all these people just running around their phone apps buying this stuff. It doesn't take much to get it going. So I'd probably leave that one alone unless it's on a spike. Then we take it down. GoCo, Go Health, not enough liquidity. Camping Worldwide. Market chatter, blah, blah, blah. Camping Worldwide posts higher quarter two results. So the earnings were a couple weeks ago. Now it's just kind of gapping down. It's an offering. So when you get like a gap down, but it's on an offering, those are, unless it's like a well-known company, the offering plays are really tricky. I'd probably leave that alone. EP, jump. All right, cool. All right, so these are the gappers that I want to play today. We got GAN, OTRK, CVAC, RKT. I think those are the ones that we want to focus in on. Now let's take a look at the regular watch list of stocks that we want to be playing. We'll go from order of importance. That way, there's nothing to be said and misconstrued. So I think order of importance. This Etsy's got a really tight range on it. It tried to push a little bit yesterday, but you're flagging right over the 9. This is one of the few tech stocks that's like not that extended right now. It's at least consolidated here for like 5-6 days. This is like your range on a 15-minute chart. It looks pretty good. So you had a big push on it on a couple days ago, and then yesterday was what we call an inside day. When you have an inside day after a big push, usually the next day after that, there's got a good chance of it going. And what I mean by that is, for example, do you see a couple days ago, we were right during free chat day and whatever, we were long in this OSTK, and we had the ORB on it, and we were trading it fairly well that day. This stock has been our moneymaker this week. Then the next day, you had what's called an inside day. So what I mean by inside day, see, the next day it just sat around. It flatlined out, and so that flatline, when it flatlines out like that, a lot of times people forget about it. But that's just an inside day. It's just a compression day. And then the next day, like, you'll take out that range and just go. And then you end up with, like, this was, like, sick, right? It was, like, 15 points of range. You can really, really get going. So, similar kind of look on Etsy. After this big push, and Etsy is a much thicker stock than OSTK, so it doesn't move in the same range. But after you get that big push, you got an inside day yesterday. Now, we'll see how this thing reacts. But I think, yeah, if you take out even yesterday's highs, this one will trigger for a potential move. SQs is very, very similar. So you had this monster, right? Monster day a couple days ago. So, it went from 140 all the way to 155, give or take 154. Now you've had a couple just rest days here. If we start to break out of, we start to take out this range, I think this re-triggers. This one looks hot. Watch at 152. That's number 2 on the list. Good. Sweet. Now let's add a couple of these other ones. I think Shill's had a couple nice orderly pullback days. So you went from 20 to 27. Now see like how it's just been chilling. It's just been chilling for a couple days. You had two nice days where you just consolidated. You've just been marinating, and you're really actually holding support pretty well. This 26 seems to be support. Watch it how it reacts today. If you start to see it just meander around and hold 26, and it starts to build, you start to see that push coming in. Higher high, higher low, starting to build up some steam. I think that this one probably comes out of this 27 zone and re-triggers for another name, for another run. Nio also looks like it's on the attack. Of a 15 breakout is in the cards at some point. You've also had, after a couple big push days, you've had nice consolidation. You had a couple inside days to tighten up that range. As that range starts to tighten up, watch how you've got a base here, right? So always just kind of know out your levels. You've got a base that's kind of been building out over here. Some support around 1390, some resistance around 1440. Watch and see how this range reacts. If it holds at 1390 today and it starts to build, right? You start to build up some steam. If it takes out 1440, I think you're good to go. Groupon has been, daily. It's a daily trader at this point. It is getting a little bit long in the tooth, but not crazy extended just yet. Frankly, we caught a really nice shred on this thing, yesterday. And it's a very, very simple setup, very simple setup where it's just like, see the weak open on this thing? Once it starts to hold at the MAs, you can kind of just shred this thing. And, we ended up catching a nice end of day run on this one. It's got the ability to move. Like, I hit this thing at 29 in 30 minutes. Like, it's, popped a $1.50. It's got that kind of good range. The other thing about Groupon is, if anybody, Groupon is a website. These website type companies, your Etsy's, your Wayfairs, your Overstock. That's been where the heat has been in the market. So this is in the right sector. It's at the right time. I think that this one's got a chance. You've got a weak open on this, which is what you want to see due to the fact that it is getting a little bit extended. So Miss Elizabeth, that weak open on it, watch how it acts, around like say 29. If it pushes back down, because that was the breakout spot yesterday. So what you want to see is like if it pushes down at the open near 29 and it starts to hold there, that's when you want to start to see how this thing starts to react. And if it starts to build its way back, then, you watch it for a red degree. Next on the list, Twatter. I personally won't trade this because it's too thick, but a lot of you guys like the thick ones. You got a big breakout here at 40. Yeah, you got a big breakout here at 40. I think that this one has a chance to go red to green and start pushing it. It's too thick for me. It's a higher float stock. It moves a little bit like AMD. It's got a good look to it, but that's it's on the list. And then, we have kind of, these are daily traders for this point if they ever break out. This ENPH. And then Run is also at a breakout spot. Both of these to trigger, they got to really kind of take out yesterday's highs, though. Otherwise, leave them alone. And if we need a short, this SRPT's shown a really nice rollover pattern here. It's gapping down a little bit, but the range on this was sick. It was from 150, 160 to 148. And actually, whenever I'm looking at a stock, I want to see, like, does it move well? Does it actually trend? Does it follow the setups that we use? So the setups that we use, like, right, opening range breakout, quick pullback buy, bear flag, so on and so forth. It's reacting to the style of trading that we like to do. Oftentimes when you're like making your list and you have a stock on your list, if it doesn't move the way you need it to move, if it doesn't react with what you use on your charts, then it's going to be of no use to you. There's some stocks that are just lawless. They're inhumane. They follow no rules of humanity. So they just do whatever they want, and then you're like left holding the bag on it. This one was reacting pretty well. I think that one's, top of the list. And then, we have all our rest of our daily traders and so on and so forth. I keep an eye on this spot for a potential swing trade. I think this it's starting to curl its way back up to 300. That one's looking actually pretty good. And then, this Crispy had a big breakout yesterday. Any kind of dips on this one, I think also is in play. So that's the list. I'm sticking to it. You guys love NVIDIA. NVIDIA is okay. Yeah, I mean, they had its earnings out. It's having a muted reaction. It's tradable. I just haven't had any good luck trading NVIDIA for a long time, so I didn't put it on the list, but it's there. And you're on the 9 EMA. If it holds, it probably goes red to green. Chegg, I don't see a setup in Chegg. mRNA stuck in a range. This one's a gelatinous turd. I think CVAC's probably an easier trade today. Riot. I don't see a setup in Riot either yet. It really needs to tighten up. It needs to kind of marinate over there. Otherwise, this one's going to be tricky. Tricky Dicky. Yeah, a lot of people have been trading Kirk, but I think Kirk looks like a short to me. You know, at least for a few days. This thing's long in the tooth. That thing's long in the tooth. Miss Kim, I'm still just using T2000. I just turn the trade ideas in the morning because it gives me the short interest, which TC1000 doesn't have. I've been going back and forth on which one I prefer. Yeah, I think CVAC is top of the list. RKT, second top of the list. Good, good, good. All right, that's the list. I'm sticking to it.